This research experience earned full ride scholarships to UCLA, Vanderbilt, and WashU. This one earned an interview to Harvard, and this one earned 30 rejections. Today, I'll break down 4 research experiences with 4 drastically different results to find out what makes a strong research experience and how to best write about them. 0 interviews rejected to 30 med schools. There's a literal typo here. Neuro is N-E-U-R-O. We can't have typos in 2024. Spell check has existed for a long time. Automatically, it actually doesn't even matter what you write afterward. And that's because I'm already primed to think poorly of this entry. Okay, but in the name of being systematic, let's look from the top. We have 450 hours over about 9 months here. It's a respectable amount of work, but again, notice that he graduated in 2019 and submitted this in 2020, so his research stopped 2 years short. And if we look at the rest of his application, which is this one here, Rejected Ben, this is from our application database that you can access always in the link in the description box below. You can go down low and see that this is the research entry, the human astrocytes and traumatic brain research that we're reviewing together. When you look at the rest of his application, there's no other research interests, and there's a separate lab here, separate publications for this lab, but nothing for this specific traumatic brain injuries research. And this lack of continuity, only being here for 8 to 9 months, only for a couple hundred hours, that probably is why there were no abstracts, no publications, no conferences attended. This doesn't really seem like his project. It seems more like he is a glorified technician following protocols and instructions that are handed down by his grad student. This research experience does not highlight his independence in the lab. And ultimately, he also doesn't have a letter of recommendation from that PI. Ben unfortunately had to reapply to medical school the next year. This last year, we're grateful to have supported 16 students who have earned over 70 interviews to date. Amongst our students, we have a full ride acceptance to Kaiser. We have an upcoming interview to Harvard. And it's a combination of our premeds' strong applications with disciplined writing that wholly captures our students' journey and resonates with AdComs. If you're applying to med school, it would be an honor to support you. We worked with 16 students last year, and we have a strict cutoff on how many students we work with this year. Make this your last application cycle. Click the application cycle advising link down below to get started before we're full. And while we're comparing different students, make sure that you're staying standardized and organized about how we grade research experiences. If you design the worst research experience ever, one way to create this grading rubric is to figure out what the worst research experience of all time would have. Find those qualities and then invert them. If you design the worst research experience possible, it would have few hours. You wouldn't have time to develop anything meaningful. And of course, this is a spectrum. There's no difference between 99 or 101 hours. But in general, if we're spending less than 150 hours in a research lab, you're probably in that lowest tier range. The worst research experience would also have no independence. You clean when your grad student says clean, and when you're running experiments, that's according to protocols that have been developed in the past. You're a glorified and really affordable technician. Worst research experience would have 0 productivity. No honors thesis, no abstracts, no posters, no presentations. And certainly no publications. You have nothing really to show for the hundreds of hours that you've put in. The research would also be on a random topic. Your entire application may be about community health, but your research is on some odd pineapple photosynthesis gene. It's totally irrelevant, and it's extremely obvious that you got it from a random counselor newsletter and you're doing it just to check the box. You'd also be lost. You have no idea what is going on in the grand scheme of your research lab. Your project may be complex and you can't simplify it. You really only know the buzzwords or the genetic strains of your mouse. And overall, you wouldn't be able to explain your research to, say, a 5th grader. The worst research entry would also be written terribly. Buzzwords everywhere, wasted sentences. It's clear that you were only involved to check that box of research. And lastly, you'd have a mediocre letter of recommendation. Your PI doesn't have anything to say to help you stand out. Now, if we flip all of these, we'll get our research report card. Invert the worst research experience ever, and you'll get one that has many hours. Thousands of hours dedicated to meaningful research. Complete independence. You lead your own projects and even train younger undergrads to help support your experiments. You perform at the level of a graduate student. Extreme productivity, multiple abstracts, posters, presentations, publications in high-impact journals, first or second authorships. The peer-reviewed scientific field respects your contributions. Thematic alignment. Your entire application revolves around disparities in liver health in Asian American populations. And your research studies how malfunctions in receptors in fatty acid metabolism, how they drive liver cancer. That's why it's infinitely important to read real applications, like those on our application database. And every time we review a new application, like the one we just did on a full ride scholarship to Kaiser, we add it to the database so you know exactly what is working right now. Over 11,400 premeds are part of our community, and we'd love it if you join too. Click the application database link in the description box below now. You're an expert. You can explain your research to anyone, from a 5th grader to other PI world experts you meet at conferences. You know exactly what your experiment looks to understand and can detail clear future directions for the lab. You are truly pushing the boundaries of science. It's also written perfectly. 20% are responsibilities. You tell me what you do. 40% is impact. You show me impact through real data and real stories. And 40% is reflection. You tell me how this research experience has changed you and why the rest of us should care about your research. And lastly, you have an outstanding letter of recommendation. Your PI puts in writing that you are the greatest thing since sliced bread. Look out for these factors when comparing these 4 research extracurriculars. The second student, this upcoming example will be heartbreaking for many of us because truthfully, he wrote this experience really well. It's still a low quality research experience because overall, he wasn't very independent and not much got accomplished. For most premeds, it is a surprise when I tell them explicitly, your research extracurricular is not as strong as you think. Especially if you want to go to a top 20 or stay in California or whatever your medical school goals are. One interview to Kansas City University. This is actually really well written, but that isn't enough to earn this student multiple interviews. From the top, we have 300 hours, and you'll have to trust me, but it's over 9 months here. Again, we're on that lower side of involvement. And if we read this together, he does a great job explaining what the lab studies and why they study it. For example, here, embryo chromosome separation errors play a significant role in pregnancy loss. They're often associated with young females below the age of 20 and women above the age of 30. For women greater than 33 years old, these rates can be above 40%. Using mouse models, I study a gene associated in holding sister chromatids together during meiosis. It's clear that his research matters to real people. And it's also clear how his research has affected him. You can see this in the second entry here. Research taught me the virtue of patience. Most protocols seem simple. Just follow the steps. I learned, however, that every step, no matter how small, is necessary. Many times I've had to repeat entire experiments because I forgot to add a tiny droplet of primer in my PCR cocktail. It's frustrating, but these mistakes have taught me to pay close attention to details. The most rewarding aspect of the research project was seeing the body of evidence I slowly built point to a conclusion. We found that REC8 levels correlate with mice fertility rates. This is a stepping stone, unlocking more questions on this gene as a possible pharmaceutical target in humans. Having children is one of the most impactful decisions in a family's life, and it all starts with meiosis, a basic biological concept. It excited me to apply myself over many hours in the lab to better understand how we can help real people build their families. You'll see here he presented his findings at his school's research conference. But ultimately, I do think this research experience falls short because there's no real independence that's described. Writing overall feels like he's told to pipette stuff and he pipettes stuff. He's told to go run the gel and he runs the gel. And while he has a great understanding of the project, it's likely that he just wasn't senior enough to lead his own independent work, to do that critical thinking, to run the scientific method himself. And as a result, that makes this research experience a tad weaker. Writing well increases the quality of your entry, but only to a point. Our student here does a great job with the 20-40-40 framework. 20% of the entry explains his responsibilities, 40% shows you clear data on how this is impacting real women, and And the last 40% explains why it matters and how he grew from this experience. Think of writing like a very nice haircut. A bad haircut will make me uglier. A perfect haircut will make me look better. But there's still a ceiling. I'm limited by the face that I was born with. And the same goes with your research. You can't turn a chicken experience into chicken salad. No matter how much excellent writing dressing that you drizzle on top, ultimately underneath all that mayonnaise, it will still be chicken. But wait, we still have 2 even stronger research experiences to share. These are all 70+ interviews we've helped our students earn this cycle alone. We are so excited to see them become doctors. We only offer 4 spots per month until we're full for the cycle. This allows us to give each student the attention that they deserve. So if you'd be interested in earning full ride scholarships to Kaiser, or maybe you want to interview with schools like Harvard, Mayo, Vanderbilt, and WashU, click the application cycle advising link below to book a free strategy call before we're all booked up for the season. Before we can't take any more students this cycle. 6 interviews, Harvard, Mayo, WashU, Vanderbilt, Cornell, UCSD. Yep, this one earned an interview to the Big H, Harvard. We'll start with the fact that there are 2 entries that are dedicated to this student's research experience. The first one features multiple presentations and posters. We have a first author in this paper. We have a presenter in that symposium, that poster session, and that showcase. We have a 4th author in that paper, a presentation in that cancer research conference, a 2nd author in that paper, and a poster presentation again. At some point, you can just look at this. That's 8 separate research contributions, and the evidence speaks for itself. Before you even read the actual research entry, you can tell that this guy is a research superstar. He's been productive, and that's only possible by putting in many hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of productive good work. And as we move on to the actual research entry, you'll see that that is reflected in the amount of time dedicated to the lab. 1250 hours already completed with another 720, totaling about 2,000 hours. Those 2,000 hours are 6 to 7 times more than the other 2 students we looked at. And to be honest, if you read this is equally well written as the 2-star worse entry. And that's because the 2-star entry was truly written well. In fact, you may argue that this is written worse than that because it's a little more confusing. There are molecular pathways and glucose uptake and translocation to the membrane post-radiation with flow cytometry, surface expression, intracranially implanted GBM. There's a ton of things that are a bit more confusing. But just like you can't turn chicken shit into chicken salad with great writing and great dressing, you also can't turn chicken salad, which is this entry that has 8 contributions to the academic field, you can't turn this chicken salad into chicken shit. No matter how terrible your writing is, or how much bad dressing you put on the chicken salad, it will still not be chicken shit. And the 2 other things outside of the hours and the level of accomplishment that stand out to me. Take a look here. He's combing through scientific literature, optimizing antibodies, refining drug amounts, sketching flow cytometry gates, performing ANOVA tests on his data sets. His PI let him lead discussions at weekly meetings and challenged him to connect results to the vast networks of metabolic pathways. He is clearly operating at the level of a graduate student. He's an independent contributor to the lab. Second is his personal connection with the research. He's doing this research and it makes sense why. He sees his family member struggle with an incurable condition, and that inspires him to energetically push on. That thematic alignment makes all of this make sense. I don't have to second guess why you're studying an aggressive brain tumor. Whereas for the first 2 research entries, it didn't really seem clear as to how that aligned with the rest of their application. We don't have to guess why he did this research. We're not suspicious at all that he's doing it just to check the box in the medical school admissions game. All of it just feels genuine. And if you believe it, we still have 1 research extracurricular that's even stronger than this one. And this is the students who earned full ride scholarships to UCLA, Vanderbilt, and WashU. Oh, and don't forget, he was also accepted to UCSF and Penn. Full ride scholarship to UCLA, Vanderbilt, WashU, accepted to UCSF and Penn. Oh, and I forgot to mention, if that wasn't enough, he also interviewed at Stanford, Northwestern, NYU, Johns Hopkins, Baylor, Cleveland Clinic, and Kaiser. This is what world-class research looks like. First author poster, finalist for the Dean's Prize, data blitz presentation at a retreat for neuroscience where he was the only undergrad presenter. Next, we have a summer fellowship, a nationally competitive award, one of 10 recipients, and received $2,500. And next, we go to another poster where he is one of 3 recipients out of 30 presenters who earned a $150 Best Poster Award. And next, he gets the Poster Day Grand Prize. Out of 86 submissions, he and 8 others were finalists, but then he wins amongst all the other finalists and gets $150 for Best Overall Presentation. And it continues. He is a first author abstract at the Society's annual meeting. The Society is the premier society conference for neuroscience, and he's presenting there. $650 travel grants, of course, from his lab and the department. And of course, we continue on with a competitive 2-year fellowship program composed of 12 students and 5 faculty members. And lastly, we make it to the actual experience itself. And you can see here, this stands out. I plan to submit a first author paper to the Journal of Neuroscience. He's accomplished so much in those last 6 entries related to his research that aren't actually talking about the research. He's accomplished so much that I almost don't need to read the actual entry. But here we go from the top. That level of impact is not possible without dedicating a ton of time. Here we have 3,000 total hours. And then I blocked this out, but this was over 3 years. That is 10 times the amount of effort that the first 2 students had in their research. And immediately, I want you to focus on the level of independence. As summer began, I started a new project on these receptors. Working directly under my PI, I was responsible for all planning, all experiments, and all data analysis, and helped influence the direction of the project. I am currently managing 3 other undergrads. He's an undergrad himself, and working with a project scientist and postdoc scholar personally to finish the project. It's almost like he's a grad student or a postdoc himself, but he's not. He's an undergrad applying to medical school. That is what true independence and expertise that you have earned after putting in 3,000 hours of work, that's what that looks like. Next, let's look at how personal it is. Thematically, it's totally aligned. I have dealt with chronic pain throughout the past 4 years of my life. This, coupled with my family members' struggle with mental illness, fuels my passion for neuroscience and has made working in this lab very personal. My pain, my family members' pain, drives me to question how we can improve medicine. So when you read and learn about his experiences and his impact in this lab, all of it makes sense because it is so personal. And when you read the reflections, you believe them. Through scientific research, I've been able to locate a hole in medical knowledge. I made a plan to improve it, and I acted accordingly to do something really meaningful. While I have in no way cured the world of chronic pain, my work is part of the solution to a much larger problem. You see the maturity, you see how much he's put into this project, you see the personal growth. Now, I want you to contextualize this research experience with all the trophy case of awards with his actual personal statement. Pain surged through my hips as I struggled to get off the couch and onto my crutches. A couple of months ago, I was competing in triathlons. Now, I couldn't bear weight on my own 2 legs. Ironically, I had undergone surgery to make my hips feel better, only to be in much greater pain than before. The road to recovery was long, with physical therapy 3 times a week, ibuprofen, and a great deal of patience. And while the experience was challenging, the removal of my physical pain drastically improved the quality of my life. It is difficult to express how happy I felt to run for the first time after struggling with my injury for so long, and for this, I have my surgeon to thank. I am intimately familiar with pain, the discomfort it brings, the mental challenges it creates, and the relief that comes with its alleviation. My interactions with pain have driven my interest in medicine, and I want to be a physician so that I can improve patients' lives in the same way that my surgeon improved mine. And then he talks about how he gets involved with his chronic pain research. He weaves in the story of his family member who also takes another drug and how their relationship is challenged by the medication's side effects. And there are powerful comments like medicine failed my family member. But ultimately, at the end of this, the reflection is crystal clear. Medicine may be limited, but it is not stagnant. Through translational research, I have been a part of the force to improve an imperfect art. And this is something I intend to continue as a physician. So when you read that personal statement with those research experiences, it's very clear you're getting someone who is world class. This is a student who is unbelievably wise beyond his years. He's motivated, he's world class at what he does, and he's just looking for a medical school to take him. The number one predictor of how effective you will be in medical school is how effective you were as a pre-med student. And truthfully, this guy is getting more done in his pre-med years than most people will have completed in all of medical school. And you'll notice that there is a ceiling to writing too. Yes, he does a great job connecting these themes of chronic pain with his personal life. But this writing is not 10 times better than the last writing or the last entry before that. And it's certainly not 100 times better writing than our 1-star entry in the beginning. But overall, this research experience is 1,000 times stronger. And that's in large part because the impact is so slap in your face clear. And again, I'm not the only one who had this same opinion. Full ride scholarships to UCLA, Vanderbilt, and Wash U. Accepted to UCSF and Penn. 4 research experiences with 4 drastically different results. If this helped you, it might help one of your pre-med friends. Share it, we'd really appreciate that. And if you liked this video, you'll like this video here where I compare 4 different clinical experiences with 4 drastically different results. See you soon.